I was supposed to finish writing this review days ago. Instead, I kept launching another run. Grind Survivors is part of a genre that has exploded over the last few years. Survivors-like games have been extremely common, and most of them follow a familiar structure where enemies flood the screen while you stack upgrades and try to survive long enough to overwhelm them. The game takes place in a world where a rupture in reality allowed demonic forces to invade Earth, and the Hellslayer's order now enters corrupted zones to hunt down the demon lords. Grind Survivors follows the familiar structure of the genre at first glance, but after spending more than 20 hours with it, the systems underneath start to reveal a different focus. The game leans heavily into weapon progression, build planning, and long-term upgrades between runs. However, there is something important to keep in mind about how the game approaches difficulty and progression. I'll come back to that in a bit. First, let's talk about how the game actually plays. Runs last about 20 minutes, and a boss appears every 5 minutes. When that happens, the game closes you into an arena with the boss, while smaller enemies continue spawning around the edges. The game currently includes 4 playable characters, each with their own active ability. You begin with one and unlock the others as you progress, which adds some variation to how runs start. Movement is fully directional, so you can travel across the map freely while waves continue building in intensity. Since there's no map, the game uses icons to guide you. Any weapon, altar, or pickup within 100 meters appears as an indicator on the edge of the screen, so you always know which direction to move. Combat can be handled manually, but the game also includes autofire and automatic abilities. In practice, I found autofire extremely responsive. It targets the nearest enemy and lets you focus on positioning, dodging, and deciding when to use your dash. If you want to concentrate damage on something specific, you can always take manual control. At this point, the structure will feel familiar if you played other Survivors likes. The difference begins to show up once the progression systems start layering together. Weapons sit at the center of the game's build system. During runs, enemies can drop weapons with randomized properties, and once unlocked, they can be equipped in future runs from the lobby. Weapons have 3 defining attributes: rarity, rank, and origin. Rank is determined by the difficulty level at which the weapon was obtained and influences the strength of its base stats. Rarity determines how many affixes the weapon can roll. Origins determine the playstyle of the weapon itself, which ends up shaping how your build functions during a run. Weapons are only one part of the progression layer though. Between runs, you can upgrade your arsenal in the forge by spending ash and sacrificing other weapons to increase the rarity of your selected weapon. There is also a skill tree where hell dust earned from elites and bosses can be spent to improve your base stats permanently. Runes add another layer before the run even begins. Each rune has a weight value, and you can only equip as many as your rune capacity allows. Some push specific elemental builds, while others change how you approach combat. During runs, you will also encounter altars scattered throughout the map. Cleansing them grants permanent bonus for the rest of that run, and higher rarity altars offer significantly stronger effects. All of these systems interact with the upgrades you select when leveling up, and certain combinations can activate powerful synergies listed in the codex. This is where the earlier point about progression starts to matter. Grind Survivors becomes demanding very quickly. Each biome must be cleared 5 times at increasing difficulty before the next one unlocks, and the enemies begin scaling aggressively as you move forward. It took me around 19 hours before I unlocked the 3rd biome. Even with strong gear, some runs can fail if your build does not produce enough damage to keep with the enemy scaling. The game quietly expects you to plan ahead. Weapon origins, rune choices, and upgrade combinations start to matter once the difficulty ramps up. At the same time, the system still allows a lot of experimentation. Upgrades do not lock each other out, so you can stack multiple elemental effects or chase different synergies depending on the build you want to create. This goes even further once you unlock Infinity Mode, where upgrades can be selected multiple times and stacked further, which can push builds into much stronger territory. Personally, I settled into 1 or 2 builds that worked well for me, but the other upgrades and weapon types means different players will likely gravitate toward different approaches. Outside of gameplay, the game is also very polished. I didn't encounter any technical issue during my time with the game. I also spent around 5 hours playing on Steam Deck and the game ran smoothly there. There are a few quality of life improvements I would like to see though. Being able to filter weapons by affinity would make it easier to locate gear for specific builds. Having the ability to save rune templates would make preparing runs faster, and having the option to choose a specific upgrade early could help players shape certain builds more consistently. Overall, Grind Survivors delivers a very polished entry into Survivors-like genre with a strong emphasis on progression systems and build planning. The weapon generation, rune system, and upgrade synergies give players a lot of ways to experiment, while the difficulty curve encourages you to actually think about how the systems interact. Players who enjoy experimenting with builds and gradually improving their arsenal over many runs will likely find a lot to engage with here. If you'd like to check the game out, the link is in the description. If you played Grind Survivors, let us know what you think. And if you liked the video, consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, and sticking around for more. I'll see you in the next one.